Comment, like, subscribe. The bell keeps you notified. It helps the show thrive. After 26 years and 1,000 plus pocket monsters later, the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet enters the Pokemon franchise into its 9th generation. For those unaware, the Pokemon games are unique in a way for the fact they are often broken down into generations, with each major release which introduces a new location, characters, and a bunch of new Pokemon being dubbed a generation. Each location of each main Pokemon game is actually based on a real-world location, with that real-world location inspiring many aspects of that world and the Pokemon within it, including the names seen there. The first 4 generations are based on different areas within Japan, which makes sense as Pokemon is a Japanese creation. After this, however, Game Freak and everyone else involved in the creation of Pokemon decided to base their little worlds on other parts of our real world. Generation 5 introduced us to Unova, a region based on the United States and primarily New York City. Generation 6 introduced us to Kalos, which is heavily inspired by France. Generation 7 brought us Alola, which was once again based on the USA, well, more specifically the state of Hawaii. And Generation 8 introduced us to Galar, based on my home nation of the United Kingdom. The Galar region was somewhat recent, and when we first got introduced to that region, I made a whole video gushing about how brilliantly British the whole thing was. Galar, however, is officially old news now in the Pokemon community. The latest games of Pokemon Scarlet and Pokemon Violet introduce us to the region of Paldea. This is perhaps the region with the most obvious real-world inspiration so far. This large mass of land is somewhat circular in shape, and while it might look like an island at first, you will notice in its northeast corner it is actually connected to other land. This is incredibly similar to Europe's Iberian Peninsula, which houses, among some other smaller territories, the nations of Portugal and Spain. Paldea seems to primarily take inspiration from just Spain, it would seem. Sorry to any Portuguese people feeling left out. Maybe some DLC will add Poke Portugal in the near future. Also, spoilers for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, I guess, if you haven't played them yet. This means that the region of Paldea is heavily inspired by all things Spanish and Romance language as a whole, it would seem. From the world's design to the Pokemon that inhabit it, to of course the names of all these things. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet are littered with names coming from the Spanish language, from the names of locations, names of characters, and of course the names of Pokemon. This can be seen perfectly in the name of Paldea itself. According to Bulbapedia, who provided a ton of information for this video, the former half of this name could possibly come from the Spanish term of paideia, meaning education, which makes sense as the character you play as is a student in the region's top academy. The pal in Paldea might also just come from the term pal, for friends, which makes sense as one of the big gimmicks in this game is that you can explore the world with your pals. The latter half of this name, however, is definitely Spanish, coming from their word of aldea, meaning village. Many of the settlement names within Paldea have a distinct Spanish sound to them too, or are directly lifted from Spanish words. For example, the location where you start your game is called a CABO POCO. This is directly from Spanish and means Little Cape. Los Platos is also incredibly Spanish sounding and means the plates. Then you have the region's main city, Mezagoza. This one is more directly inspired by the name of an actual city in Spain, that being Zaragoza. I'm not going to go into every city name, but you can just hear the Spanish influence in them with the likes of Cortondo, Montenevera, Artizon, and Zapico. One of particular interest, however, is Porto Marinada. Porto is of course not a Spanish name, but a Portuguese name. And what's great about this one is not only is this town located on Paldea's western coast, but it lies pretty closely to where the actual city of Porto in Portugal is on the Iberian Peninsula. It's little details like this that I really enjoy in these games. But it goes beyond the geographic names in these games. Characters fill this world, and on a slight tangent, I have to admit that I think Scarlet and Violet have the best characters in the whole series yet. So many people I actually cared about and enjoyed interacting with. It's something I don't think I've ever actually felt about in a Pokemon game. And while definitely not a Spanish name, but Larry is like my new favourite Pokemon character. Anyway, really clever Spanish names in this game for characters come with the professors. Each game has a different professor. Scarlet features Professor Sada and Violet features Professor Churlo. Each game reflects the theme of past and future respectively, and this can even be seen in the names of their professors. Scarlet's theme is past, and the name of Professor Sada comes from the Spanish word for past, Posada. Conversely, the name of Violet's professor is Professor Cholo, and as Violet's theme is future, it should come as no surprise to learn that this name comes from the Spanish word for future, futuro. These two professors also buck the long-held tradition of Pokemon professors having names that derive from trees and plants. The headmaster of Paldea's school is named CLAVELL. This name actually comes from Catalan and their word for a carnation, which actually is a floral name. But of course, the main thing we have to talk about is the actual names of the Pokemon themselves. There are some really terrific Pokemon designs and names in this generation. While all the names of Pokemon don't come from Spanish roots, there are a collection that do, with this being most apparent in the names of the starter Pokemon. If you are watching this and have gotten this far and don't actually play Pokemon, starter Pokemon are a choice of 3 Pokemon you get at the start of each main game. They are always grass, fire, and water type, which explains the basic rock, paper, scissors battle mechanics of the series. These starter Pokemon always have 2 evolutions too. The grass starter in Paldea is a cute little cat called Sprigatito. While Sprig might be an English term for a little twig or herb, the latter part of this name is where the Spanish appears, as Gatito is the Spanish word for kitten. So this grass type cat's name means twig kitten. Very cute. Its evolved form of Floragato once again is a plant and feline based combo of words. Flora means plant life, and the latter half of gato comes from the Spanish word for cat, gato. Its final form of Meowscarada has the cat reference in the first half of its name this time, with the term meow. The latter part of this name comes from the Spanish word for masquerade, mascarada. Though I think the single best Spanish inspired name for a Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet comes with the name of the fire type starter Pokemon of Fuecoco. From a design perspective alone, they are a little fire crocodile, which is shaped like a chili pepper. That's adorable, but the name is seriously incredible. The first part of this name comes from the Spanish word for fire of fuego, because it's a fire type. What I love most, however, is the latter part of the name, Coco. This is seen by some as coming from the Spanish word for crocodile, cocodrilo, which undoubtedly makes a lot of sense. Though I think there is more at play here. I think this might derive from the Coco of Spanish folklore. The Coco is a ghost-like creature in Spanish-speaking parts of the world, used to scare little kids and such. It's also the cocoa referred to in the coconut. I think Fuecoco is named after this creature not only because of the Spanish origins, but also because it evolves into a Pokemon that is part ghost type, and the Coco is seen as a ghostly being. Its evolution of CROCALOR is a compound of crocodile in English and the Spanish word for heat, calor, and its final form of Skeledirge is when it gains its ghost typing. While this name doesn't come from Spanish words, it relates to the Spanish-speaking culture. It derives from the English word skeleton and dirge, a type of hymn for the dead sung in Christianity. These both reflect heavily the Day of the Dead festival held in the Spanish-speaking nation of Mexico and other parts of the world. The water starter line of Quaxley, Quaxwell, and Quaquava don't have too much Spanish influence in their names, unfortunately, though the final form's name might come from the Portuguese quaqua, their word for the sound ducks make. Beyond the starters, we have Lechonk, a small little pig Pokemon met early in the game. This pig is named after Lechon, the Spanish name for a suckling pig. It might also link to the slang term of chonk, which is adorable. Smoliv is an olive-themed Pokemon, and olives are linked with Spain, and its name is a combination of smol, another slang term like chonk, and olive. Its final form of Arboliva contains the Spanish word for tree in it, arbol. The fish Pokemon of Veluza also has a great Spanish name. It comes from a combination of the Spanish word for fast, veloz, and meluza, the Spanish word for hake, the tasty fish this Pokemon is very much inspired by. Armarouge, the fire and psychic type, has a name of joint Spanish/Portuguese and French origins. The first part may come from the Spanish/Portuguese alma, meaning weapon, and rouge is the French word for red. Though perhaps the most Spanish Pokemon of Scarlet and Violet, with a name even more Spanish than Fuecoco, has to be Flamigo. This Pokemon is pretty much just a flamingo, a creature deeply linked to Spain and even named after the Spanish flamenco dance. This Pokemon's name is a combination of flamingo and the Spanish word for friend, amigo, which is one of the most well-known Spanish words in the wider world. Most people who don't even speak a lick of Spanish know that amigo means friend, like myself. Even the legendary Pokemon that graced the game's box art might have names of Spanish root. Well, partially. The cover Pokemon for Scarlet is called Coridon, and the cover Pokemon for Violet is called Maridon. The former part of these names mean ancient and future in Japanese respectively, once again to do with the past and future themes in Scarlet and Violet respectively. The part of their name that might be Spanish, however, are the latter part, the Don at the end of their names. Don is the term for Mr. in Spanish, but is also used to refer to someone of a high power. It can even be used honorifically to mean Lord. It would make sense why these powerful, important Pokemon would use the Spanish title for Lord in their name, considering they are some of the most powerful Pokemon in these games. However, it might also just come from the Don suffix used to name many dinosaurs. This also makes a lot of sense as these Pokemon are very dinosaur-like. Though a fun fact about legendary Pokemon is that most of the time, they have the same name in every language the Pokemon games get translated into. It's a rule Game Freak like to keep to with them. That's just some of the Pokemon with Spanish sounding names, but even some of the new Pokemon who don't have Spanish inspired names still have really great names. Fido is a dog Pokemon made from bread, and its name is a perfect pun of the popular dog named Fido and bread dough. Its evolved form of Dash Bun is a combination of a bread bun and a Dachshund, a dog with a Germanic name. Another Germanic named Pokemon is Tandemaus. These two mice are considered one Pokemon, and their name is a mixture of tandem meaning two and the German word for mouse. For their evolution, they literally either have one or two kids and become known as Mousehold, a combination of the German mouse and household. Nacli is a rock salt Pokemon, and while its name might sound a little strange at first, it makes a ton of sense. Its name simply comes from the chemical formula for table salt, NaCl. Though not all of them can be winners, however. Relor is a beetle Pokemon that rolls around a ball of, well, you know what. Its name is just Roller backwards. I thought we were done with this kind of thing back in Gen 1 with Ekans and Arbok. Though one of the coolest naming tidbits from Scarlet and Violet doesn't relate to a Pokemon at all, rather the villainous team in this entry. The team are called Team Star, and their leader goes by the codename of Cassiopeia. The name of the gangs within the team are called Segan, Shada, Navi, Rukbar, and Kaif. This might sound super strange at first, but these are actually really clever. All of these are the names of individual stars within the real-world constellation of Cassiopeia. Reddit user Lizzie Mars pointed this out, and is a fun fact many of us are picking up on. It goes to show us that while to many, Pokemon might just seem like a silly game for kids or a nostalgia money pit for grown-ass people like myself, they're actually games created with a lot of thought and care, even when they are super glitchy. The developers of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet easily could have just said it was based off Spain and done the bare minimum, but they put in so much thought and detail into things like Pokemon designs and names to make sure they reflect the real-world Spain, its culture, and its language. I really hope that Pokemon Scarlet and Violet give many Spanish people the same sense of pride and excitement that the UK-based Pokemon Sword and Shield gave me all those years ago. Anyway, I'd best be off. Gotta, well, you know. Name Explained depends on viewers like yourself supporting the channel financially on Patreon, so a huge thank you to everyone who does. Donating just $1 a month helps the channel amazingly and gets you bonuses including ad-free videos, exclusive content, and the power to request ideas to be made into actual Name Explained videos. $2 a month gets you all that, plus your name here with all these awesome people. Visit patreon.com/nameexplain or click the link down below to find out how you too can support the channel. Thank you. Thanks for reaching the end of the video. Why not watch another and subscribe to keep up to date on all things Name Explain. You can find myself on Instagram where I'm NameExplainYT, and join the Facebook group Friends of Name Explain to talk with myself and other name nerds. All that will be linked down below. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and once again, thank you all so much.